The Kawasaki ZH2. I absolutely love this motorcycle. It's one of my all-time favorite motorcycles to ride, as a lot of you already know. But there have been a few viewers that have left comments in the past saying about how amazing this motorcycle is. You know, thank you for the recommendation. But it's their first motorcycle. Never in a million years, guys, would I recommend a motorcycle like this for any beginner rider, regardless of your age, your height, your weight, whoever you are. This is not a motorcycle that you start on. But if you are lucky enough to live in one of those countries where you have no restrictions on the motorcycles you can ride, then that doesn't mean that you should abuse it. I say abuse it. I mean that you're putting yourself in danger, really, at the end of the day, without any experience getting on something like this. And so in today's video, I kind of just thought, well, for those of you that do live in a country where you have no restrictions on what bike you can learn to ride on, well, we're going to go over some motorcycles that I would recommend as the biggest for you to learn on. I mean, here in the UK, of course, the biggest that we can learn on is a 125, and then we can go on to an A2 bike, and before then, depending on your age as well, you can go on to a full A license anyway, and at that point you can ride any bike you like. But I mean, we're going to be talking a lot about A2 motorcycles in today's video, because I actually think that they make some fantastic beginner bikes, and it does give beginner riders just a little bit more of that motorcycle experience that a lot of people are looking for, rather than 125s. Even though 125s can be absolutely fantastic motorcycles in their own right, I mean, they are made to be cheaper, they're not going to be as reliable, and I mean, for me anyway, they're not quite as fun. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely love my wife's Ninja 125. I think it's a fantastic motorcycle. But if there were no restrictions on the motorcycle that she could ride, then I'd actually encourage her to get on an MT-03 or an R3, something like that instead. Just because they give you a similar kind of weight to manipulate, a similar weight that you have to control than as a 125cc motorcycle. But and a lot of the time they're just as forgiving as a 125cc motorcycle as well, because in a lot of countries the 300s, the A2 class motorcycles, are actually the beginner bikes that a lot of people will start on. And that's not a bad thing, guys. A lot of the A2 bikes are absolutely fantastic motorcycles, but you have like meaningful power as well. One of my biggest criticisms behind 125s is that they're not a real representation of what a motorcycle actually feels like to ride, in the sense of the sheer amount of power output. How quick you can actually go on something like a 300 is totally different to a 125, but it actually is more representative of what it is like to actually ride a motorcycle for real. I mean, imagine going from an R3 from Yamaha, by the way, a Yamaha R3. If you go from one of those to something like a 600cc sport bike, well, the jump isn't actually that big. I mean, well, it is huge, but it's not going to feel that massively different. Now, when I did my motorcycle license here in the UK, I went from a 125cc all the way up to a parallel twin 650. Now, that might not have been such a bad idea, to be honest. I mean, yeah, okay, it's a massive jump from 125cc, but at my age, I could have gone straight to a 600cc sport bike. In fact, I could have gone up to a 1000 if I wanted to, from a 125. I think that's why they changed the way how it works now, but back then that's what I could have done. But I'd feel a lot more comfortable having someone that learned to ride on something like a 300, then jumping on a 1000, then being on a 125 and jumping on a 1000, because the 300cc class, the A2 class, is far more representative of what it actually feels like to ride a motorcycle. I've said that already, but it is the absolute truth. Why? Funny enough, I think in our ride review of the Ninja 125, it feels like a bicycle with a motor in it, and most motorcycles out there do not feel like a bicycle with a motor in it. They feel like machines. They feel like proper hardware. Something that you can do ridiculous speeds on in a very short amount of time. And it's just, again, it's just one of those things that irks me about the whole system here in the UK. I don't think that it should be limited to 125 for learner riders, to be honest. It should be higher than that. I mean, I don't know how many people give up on riding motorcycles after riding a 125, because you kind of, I don't know, like, I do wonder how many people get the impression of, oh well, I've been there, done that now, I've experienced everything that motorcycling has to offer after being on a 125cc for a few years, and it's absolutely not the truth, man. But anyway, yeah, I mean, that's talking about the UK system anyway, but let's talk about those of you who are lucky enough to live in a country where there are no restrictions on motorcycles. And I have to say, I would be happier if I lived in a country like that, to be honest, where there is no restrictions on motorcycles, at least on what you can ride. You know, like getting a driving license. If you got a driving license, all of a sudden, even if you're 17 or 18, you can drive any car you like. But why can't you ride any motorcycle you like if you got a full motorcycle license? Or if you know, if you're 17 and you get a motorcycle license, I don't know. That's what I don't get about the UK. But anyway, so so motorcycles that I think are good learner bikes, bikes that are big, that have meaningful power, and bikes that you can actually enjoy, and motorcycles that you will fit on, guys. Motorcycles that you will actually fit on. Because I know a lot of, I say a lot, a few people have left comments before. I think I mentioned this in the intro about how they bought a bloody ZZR 1400, a ZX14 from Kawasaki, and they bought it because they thought, well, that's the only bike that would fit them. The ergonomics of motorcycles is one thing I don't quite understand. A lot of ergonomics on motorcycles are the same between little bikes and big bikes, because the size of the handlebars don't change. If you go from a 125 to a 1 litre or 1400, the width of the handlebars doesn't change, the length of the handlebars doesn't change. It's just the physical bike underneath that changes, and the ergonomics are the same. So if you bought yourself a motorcycle that is a 1400, it would feel the exact same in terms of ergonomics for a big person as it would probably on a 300. Seriously, ergonomics don't change that much from motorcycle to motorcycle. It's just the frames that are smaller, it's just the engines that are smaller. And even then, motorcycle frames don't change that much either in terms of physical size. So honestly, if you are a bigger person, then I would actually look at something like supermotos. Supermotos have very, very tall seat heights, and so for a taller person, it makes a lot more sense. And you can get supermoto type motorcycles in any class, pretty much any class. Now I'm trying to think off the top of my head like a 1000 supermoto, but there's no point anyway, because by the time you get to that, you can get on some adventure bikes and things that are physically taller as well for bigger people, and you get a very, very similar experience of something like that as you would on any other 1 litre. Okay, it's not going to be a sport bike, but remember that sport bikes have notoriously some of the worst ergonomics that you can find on any motorcycle anyway. So if you are a taller person, you're just going to experience the same ergonomic problems that almost anyone else will, unless you are about 5 foot 5 foot in height. I say that, but you guys know what I mean. If you're a bigger person, have a look at starting off on a supermoto, all right? A 300, 400cc supermoto, if you're a taller person. Now, if you're an average sized person, again, the same thing applies here, guys. Look at something between 300cc and maybe up to 500cc. Something like a Honda CBR 500R. Again, here in the UK and in Europe, it's classed as an A2 motorcycle, but it is slightly detuned, so it can fit with the regulations of A2. Whereas in the United States, and I'm sure around the rest of the world, it's actually tuned from the factory as it was intended, I believe. So it has a little bit more horsepower. But again, something like that isn't crazy. You can do over 100 miles an hour on it. You can do 0 to 60 in, I don't know, 6 seconds or so, 6 to 7 seconds, which is pretty damn quick, okay? I mean, you'll be outpacing almost anything else on the street, apart from other bikes. So something like that will give you a really good experience, a really good motorcycle experience, but it's something that you can actually practice on, that you can learn on. It's something that you can gain confidence on, you know? And that's the worst thing, guys, is when people get overconfident on a massive bike. When they get overconfident on a massive bike, that's when bad things start happening. That's when they start getting into crashes and things because they think they can handle the power of the bike and they actually can't. They don't know how to handle the power of the bike. But if you learn on something a bit smaller, and that's the thing, after a year, 2 years, there will come a point where the power is almost too manageable for you. It's not something that's challenging for you anymore. It's not something that is as exciting as it was for you. I think that's the same with a lot of people, where they kind of outgrow the size of that motorcycle, so they move up to something bigger. That's how it should be, guys. You do not want to be starting on a 1 litre. You don't want to be starting on even a 600, as far as I'm concerned. I don't think you should be starting on that. That should be a secondary bike. Something to look at after you've had a go on that 400, after you've had a go for a year at least, maybe 2 years on that CBR 500R. Because it might not sound like a massive jump, but trust me, between the CBR 500R and the CBR 600RR, it is a crazy difference in terms of power output. Crazy difference. So I wouldn't start off with something like that. But you could start off on a parallel twin 650 as well if you really pushed it. But I wouldn't recommend it, okay guys, I wouldn't. Anything more than 50 to 60 horsepower, that's pushing it, from my perspective, I think. Not necessarily because of the top end power, but the torque is going to be there, guys. When you get to a 650 parallel twin, the torque is monstrous, especially compared to a learner bike, a starter bike. So yeah, guys, I mean, hey, if I could go back and relearn on a different motorcycle, well, I wouldn't learn on a 125. I think they're pretty much pointless. You're not really going to get that much experience out of a 125cc bike. But if you get a little bit of power in that experience, if you feel that speed in that experience, a little bit of speed, then it teaches you more lessons. It gives you more beneficial experience. It's like, so, I mean, imagine if you are someone who rides a 125 all the way from CBT to A2, all the way to your full license here in the UK, like I did. Well, do you think that's meaningful experience? Meaningful enough to go from that bike to a 1 litre? I'd argue no, it isn't valuable experience. That's what I mean. If you buy an A2 motorcycle, or if you learn to ride on an A2 motorcycle, if you live in one of those countries where you're allowed to do that, then that is going to be that meaningful experience that I'm talking about. That's exactly what you need to give you that positive experience, the experience that if you make a mistake, it's not necessarily going to be the end of you, yeah? Which unfortunately, on the bigger bikes, if you really don't know how to control them, or you think you know how to control them and you end up losing control one of these days, then it can end up pretty badly for you, yeah? That's all I'm saying, guys. And I know that there are going to be people out there that are going to ignore this advice anyway, and look, hey, if you're one of those people, then fine. It's your life, it's your freedom, do as you like, but I want more riders on the road, guys, not less, yeah? And the bigger the bike you get when you're starting off, well, the more likely you're going to get into some kind of catastrophic accident. You're probably not going to walk away from. Yeah, and it happens all too quickly and all too easily and all too common, guys. Yeah, so just get that experience under your belt, get those good few years experience on a meaningful bike, something that has power, something you can enjoy, something that you can keep up with your mates on, yeah, and something that is gonna actually help you later on when you do come to ride the 1 litres, when you do come to ride the 600s and 1 litre plus motorcycles. Yeah, oh man, losing daylight again. I keep coming out too late, it's so annoying. Well, the rain forced me to leave it later today. I wanted to come out in the morning, but I didn't get the chance because of that stupid rain here in the UK, the stupid winter in the UK. But anyway guys, let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I mean, did you start off on a 1 litre? Let me know how that's going for you. Maybe for you it's actually going all right, and let us know your experiences, your thoughts on that. I mean, there are going to be some people out there, I have no doubt, that will get on a 1 litre and it's not going to be a problem, and they're riding big bikes for the whole of their lives. And hey, like I said, there's nothing wrong with that, guys. But I just want you to be sensible. And there are going to be, most people out there are not going to be able to handle a 1 litre as their first bike. They might think they can, but they actually can't. And that's what we're trying to avoid here, guys. You know, let's have a bit of restraint when it comes to our choices in life and our choices on our motorcycles. I know that for a lot of us, our motorcycles are our lives, so just keep that in mind. But and you know, if you do have a mate that's looking to start riding motorcycles and you are an experienced rider, give them the same message, guys. So, say to them, look, start off on something a little bit smaller, get that experience up, because you want your mate to live, you want your mate to enjoy their motorcycle experience and not be scared shitless of something that happens because they're on a motorcycle that they couldn't handle. And honestly, that's something easily done, guys. It's easily done. Getting on a motorcycle that's too big for you is a very common mistake, believe it or not, especially if you live in a country where there's no restrictions. But yeah, guys and gals, leave a like. Hope you enjoyed this little ride out with me. I'm sorry that it's getting a bit dark now, but hopefully the GoPros are handling it okay. But yeah, massive shout out to all our patrons as usual: Mark W, Lone Wolf UK, Dope Style Gaming, and yeah, we'll catch you all in the next one.